Hello, hello. Welcome and welcome back, everyone, to the Learn with Kubi podcast. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. Today, we have a very special guest who is going to really be breaking down for you all what you need to be understanding about the influencer marketing selection process. So, if you are a creator or an influencer who is just looking to get into the field and really start off with a strong foundation, this episode is going to give you a lot of information that you're going to need to build that strong foundation. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather, but we're hanging in there. So let's dive right in. First off, thank you, Olivia, so much for joining us on this episode. Excited to have
Absolutely.
you.
Excited to be here.
Thank you. So, I'm going to start off by reading Olivia's bio as I always do for each episode. Olivia Parker is an Austin based social media and influencer marketing strategist with experience across food and beverage, nonprofit, and mission driven brands. Through her work at Sterling Rice Group, she partnered with organizations like Boston Beer Company, Potatoes USA, the National Honey Board, and the Almond Board of California, helping bring creator led campaigns to life through a mix of influencer strategy, organic storytelling, and paid social. So she has a wealth of experience that you definitely want to be learning from today. Before we get into these questions, actually, Olivia, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey and kind of what
Yeah,
led you to the social media influencer marketing space?
absolutely. I tried out a bunch of different internships at small companies all the way to large companies and found that I really enjoyed the fast paced nature of an agency and getting to work with different clients and different industries and target audiences and all of that. And so I ended up in an internship at Sterling Rice Group, was there for 4 years after that, working with different clients. Social media was really something I was passionate about because being Gen Z, we're kind of the generation that was raised on social media, and so we have a unique positioning with that to understand why it works, how it works, all of that. And so that's what kind of brought me into it. And then the more time and years that I was on it, it has changed and grown, and it is a new world now, but it's something that I still feel like is exciting and I can get behind. So that's kind of how I got into social media.
Yeah, I love that. And I think having that path between getting to experiment with different internships and then,
Mhm.
figuring out that really helps you feel authentic in your decision, right? So I think
Absolutely.
from what I've observed, people who actually enjoy the work they're doing oftentimes produce better work. So I'm really excited to kind of hear about the work that you've done and, give the folks who are listening an opportunity to really just learn from you. So my first question is, what do creators need to know about brand partnerships, right? And how do brands actually select their partners?
Absolutely. The key thing for creators to understand about the brand and creator selection process is that the target audience is going to be the key deciding factors of the brand. So, if the creator's existing content, existing organic audience is misaligned with the brand's target audience, that's an automatic out for brands. And so, what's important from a creator side to understand is that when you are leading the discussion and going to brands, you need to be talking to brands who have a similar audience as you, because they're going to trust that you're going to create high enough quality content to translate to their target audience, to be used for paid, for organic, to be talking to your audience about their product. They want this to feel as native to the platform as possible and not like an ad. And so that is the number one thing I would say. It's also important to understand that creators are treated at different levels. So we have everything from UGC to nano, micro, mid tier, macro, and then celebrity. And what level the brand is looking for is really dependent on marketing strategy, budget, business goals overall. So, if we're looking at more of an awareness play, what's most important to brands are creators who have larger followings, higher engagement rates. For brands who are looking to just outsource content, they're going to be looking more at that UGC, nano, micro level. And so, what's also important to understand as a creator is that while you might get an opportunity from a bigger brand with more budget and getting all these eyeballs on your content, you have to keep up with the community management of that too, because that can be a common issue that brands and creators run into when they're working together. Is you have a creator who just doesn't have the bandwidth to be in the comments, like hiding negative comments and responding to positive. And so you have to have the bandwidth as a creator to endure and understand what that level of exposure will do to your page. So those are the top two, I would say. And then the last one would be brand safety. That's so important to brands, and it's going to look different from commodity boards, from food and beverage DTC clients, and all of that. And so it's important as a creator that you are not getting into the political talk, not putting anything out there that brands would feel uncomfortable to be working with you with. That level of comfortability is going to depend brand to brand. It's going to depend on government regulation if they're a food and bev company. And then it's also going to depend on what they're looking for. Like some clients are going to be like, I don't want to see any skin on creators and I want a fitness video. And some are going to be like, let's see them out in the gym in their sports bra working out. So it really depends, and you'll learn as a creator as you talk to them and you look at briefs.
Yeah, there's so much that I want to jump into after that. But I think my first question is, why is it important that the word partner is used as opposed to just content creator influencer?
So important because it's both something that brands really need to understand and creators also really need to understand. Brands are selecting creators because they trust them and they understand their audience and they understand how to create content presumably better than the brand, because the brand would not be hiring them if they didn't trust them, to create higher quality content. And so that's really important from a brand side. From a creator side of things, it's really important that you are complying with what is in your brief, because the brand is trusting you to do that. So when you are signing up for these, you're applying for briefs, you need to understand everything that goes along with that, what the restrictions are, what they're specifically looking for. And I think that's where we run into a lot of trouble, is creators really want to go off and do what they know works really well for their audience, but sometimes that's not going to work well with the brand. So it's kind of balancing this delicate line and balance of what works best for brand, and letting the brand trust the creator to do what they do best. So it's a delicate line, but partner is really important, because even from the beginning when you're applying to briefs to all the way to round one reviews, round two reviews, like being open and asking questions about what's most important with the brand is how you can stand out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, just to your point, a lot of creators undermine the the way the relationship is supposed to be built, right? In those initial stages, partnership is really literal, because you're showcasing dependability, you're showcasing consistency, you're showcasing that you understand their needs. And so, what would you say partnership does in terms of making or breaking a deal in the beginning stages?
Yeah, I mean, it has to do with understanding the target audience, kind of what I said at the beginning. If the creator can position themselves as, I know that this creative idea is going to work for your target audience because this has resonated with my organic audience. That is what being a partner at the beginning is, because you need to understand that you're not just a content creator who's supplementing the creative team, for the brand. What you're doing is you are better reaching in a more authentic way their target audience, and they need to know that. Also, being open and willing to answer questions, to talk about the metrics behind your organic audience is so important, because that is something that brands are looking for. So being transparent and honest of, I do community management, I can handle community management, or I cannot handle community management, and I can't have $50,000 behind my one post because I can't keep up with 500 comments. So it's really important to just be as transparent as possible with brands at the beginning, for both you and the brand, because you don't want to get into a contract with the brand where at the end you're not delivering what they were expecting, and then that breaks and burns a bridge with that brand, and that can get around in the industry. So it's really important that you're acting like a partner from the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking about the community management piece, a lot of
Yeah,
creators don't know that that is something that comes with
it
getting
is.
the big dollars. So, what else would you say is something that creators don't realize once they get these bigger brand deals? What is something that they need to be aware of so that they come prepared to handle that level of work?
Yeah, you're an extension of the brand now. You represent that brand. So if their mission, their values, their content they're putting out is not aligned with who you are and what you're putting out there, that can be a huge mismatch. So if, for example, the brand starts to get political and you are not political, that is another way that can go both ways, where you are now being tied into something as well. And so it's important to you that you understand the brand, you're picking them based on the mission, you're accepting proposals because you are okay being an extension of the brand. That is probably the biggest thing. The other thing is that they are looking for high quality work. So your round one needs to have effort. It needs to have text overlays if asked. It needs to have trending audio if asked, because the last thing that brands want to do when working with creators is go back to the drawing board each time, because that pushes out the timeline of their campaign and pushes out the timeline of their budget. And there's a lot of constraints with that as well, especially when working with agencies who are representing the client, because they're the middle person, and they have to communicate this to client. And sometimes clients not going to be happy to work with you as a creator if you are constantly needing to revise what you're doing, because the first round, you could tell, only took you an hour to do. So that's really important. Also, just having that expertise and communicating that to brands, right? Like that is something I don't think creators understand takes a lot of time, but you need to be able throughout the process to talk about like how you know what works for audiences, what trending audio works, what text overlays work, what hooks work, all of that, because that also can be timely, because you have to stay up with what does work in the industry. So I would say those are the biggest thing, but absolutely, content quality is key.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, already so much, and we're just 10 minutes into the episode. So I hope you all are taking notes. We're gonna have the episode notes available for purchase afterwards, but definitely be tuning in. So I'm looking at my questions here because I really want to make sure that I'm touching on what creators really want to understand. So what is the most important piece outside of audience alignment that brands are looking for when determining what creators to work with?
Creators who understand social first, understand what works, what is trending, isn't a trend hopper. That's a buzzword in our industry, right? Not jumping on a trend just to jump on a trend, but a way to do it authentically. And so brands are looking for content creators and influencers who know how to do that authentically and make things not feel like an ad and feel native to the platform. So that is the best way you can set yourself up for success as a creator, is grow your organic page, grow your organic audience, and make that show that you are a subject matter expert in creating content for social media. Because it doesn't matter if you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube. I mean, there's so many social platforms, right? You have to show that you understand what works for each platform, and you're not just cross posting from each, like from
Mhm.
TikTok to Instagram and Instagram to YouTube. That is also key, because when brands are selecting creators, they're selecting the ones who own that platform and understand that platform based on the brand's marketing strategy and goals, because not all brands are going to be advertising on every social media platform that you're active on, and they're going to be selecting you based on which one is most important to them, and are you able to deliver for them on those platforms and show that you understand what works and the creative nuances between each of them.
Yeah. And the platform selection piece, I think, also goes back to the partnership, right? Knowing what platforms your partner is already on, these brands are already on. So, what would you think are some ways that creators can build their research database, right? How do they know to digest what a brand is looking for based on the platform that they're on?
So existing content is key. What is their existing content on these platforms look like, and does it match or align with what you're doing? Or could you act like a consultant for a second and do an audit of their existing social media and say, okay, you can tell that this is not working for their audience. So what I could do for them is going to make their engagement soar, because that is really important to brands, that engagement is doing well, because that's how you fight the algorithm, right? So that is a key way you can do it. Also going to their websites, finding their social pages, following them, being an active community member on their pages can also help, because it's going to change based on if they hire an agency, they hire a new creative team member, and you want to be able to show that you're going to provide as much value as a new hire to their brand is going to provide for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about fighting the algorithm, let's just
Yes.
quickly touch on some ways that creators can do this. And is it important for creators to have this huge following and to have super engaged audiences, or is it more so just about the content quality itself?
It's a mix, and it depends on the brand in the strategy for influencers. I think maybe 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, an influencer was someone with 50,000 plus followers, right? And had strong engagement rates of over 10%. And that's what brands were looking for. But nowadays, in this fast paced, creative content engine, I guess, that you can call social media, where you have to keep up with the constant like trends and changing of the algorithms and all of that. It's different for brands. They're looking for, some are looking for celebrities and have the budget to do that. Some are looking for macro that have 500,000 plus followers. And then some that are a little smaller are looking for people who can just create content for them. So I wish there was one answer that suits everyone, but I think it's really owning whatever level you're at. I mean, from a creator side, you obviously want to grow your following and you want to grow your engagement, because that establishes you with more credibility in the industry. It also allows you to monetize it outside of ads as well. So there's that aspect. So don't do things to not grow your social following, but you also are not counted out if you don't have this large following. It's still something that smaller brands are going to be looking for. So I think with fighting the algorithm, it's less about that following and that engagement, and well, more about the engagement, less about the following, because it's important that your audience is actually interacting with your posts and not just following you. So I would say creating valuable content for your audience is the best thing that you can do, and showing that people are saving and sharing. I mean, likes are less important, comments are less important. What's most important is, are they wanting to show this to other people or save it for later? So
Yeah.
that is just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, so I love some key things you mentioned. Owning the lane that you're in. I
Yes.
think that is so important because oftentimes I'll see creators comparing themselves to folks who have hundreds of thousands, millions of followers, and it's like you can't skip levels. You're at this level right now, so let's just focus on being the best that you can be at this level. And then the second
Absolutely.
thing that you mentioned, shares and saves. So those are some of the key metrics that matter more than comments, likes, those sort of metrics.
Yeah, I would say so. It depends on the platform, of course, right? Because we're not going to have saves on YouTube, for example. But if you understand the background of how these algorithms work on each platform, you can really own engagement. And from an Instagram and a TikTok standpoint, that share and save is gold. And those are big players for most brands in different industries, because they know that is the way to most authentically engage with their audience. And then they usually have more soft touch points with the other platforms. And so if you really understand what works for TikTok, that can also translate across other platforms as well. Just understanding why users are engaging with certain content and not with others.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. So we're really getting into it. So a follow-up question for that is what can creators do to actually stand out? I know you touched on this a bit in the beginning, but you know, the brand has their campaign, they have their target audience. They're looking at creators who match that audience. Now, what is the brand asking? What are they looking for the creators to be doing in particular when applying to the brief or even pitching? How do they stand out?
Absolutely. I think the biggest way is in the creative concept idea, even if you're not asked. So there's multiple ways that creators are contracted with brands, right? There's the direct outreach where brands are reaching out to you in your DMs, or you're reaching out to them in their DMs or via email, right? There's influencer management platforms like Popular Pays, Later, all of that. If you are contracted with them, that's a different process. There's smaller ones like Coley that are UGC focused. And so with direct outreach, the best thing that you can do is to position yourself as, I understand your audience better than you do, and I can create content that is going to soar your page and is going to make people drive usage, or whatever you believe the overall business goals are for social media for this brand. If you can prove that you can do that when you're pitching them, that is so key. When it comes to influencer management platforms where you're applying to mass briefs, right? And then you're being selected based on the brand's criteria and everything, you can stand out by being very responsive, is the first thing. Can you reach out to them first after getting accepted, saying, I'm very excited to work in those partnerships, and asking questions that you have that matter. Like, what are the main purposes of this campaign? What are the main creative objectives that you're wanting to convey? What are some examples of prior work that you view as high quality? That's a way that's going to make you stand out, because not a lot of creators do that and assume that once you're picked, you're in, and the brand's going to be excited and they're going to say, this is the best creator content I've worked with. From a Coley UGC standpoint, and a smaller, more nano content creator standpoint, what you can be doing is showing portfolio work. Can you upload examples of prior work that you have done, regardless if it lives on a public page or not? But if you can say, I have done this for another brand, it establishes credibility for you and also gives the brand an idea of what your creative style is. And that is a way that they can kind of figure out if you stand out, if you're the right fit for the brand. So I think it really depends on how you're interacting and contracting with the brands. But all in all, the best thing you can do is just position yourself as curious, position yourself as you understand what goes into these partnerships, and then that you understand your audience.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And let's kind of take a step back. So, for those who don't know about being contracted by brands, you mentioned direct outreach, you mentioned
Yes.
influencer marketing platforms. So, those
Yeah.
are outbound to the creator, outbound and
Yes.
inbound.
Yeah.
What should creators know about all the ways that they could be contracted by a brand?
Yeah, there's many. I mean, there's the direct, right? There's the influencer management platforms. There are programs within the platforms themselves. For example, TikTok One is a great opportunity, and TikTok selects those influencers. So it's not something that you would directly be applying for as a brand. It's the, or like selecting the creators as a brand. It's creators that have chosen to opt into this and have been vetted by TikTok, and that looks different because it's very streamlined. It's through TikTok. There's not direct interaction between you and the brand. So that's something to also consider, is that when you're on a platform like TikTok One and brands are going in to select you, they're only seeing what are your metrics on your organic page, what does your existing content look like, and what does your existing organic audience look like. And they're basing everything for this creative campaign on that. And so what's really important is you have to have strong metrics. You have to have strong organic content, a strong presence, strong ratings from other brands if you're going to be on a platform like that, versus an influencer management platform or direct outreach where you can talk to the brand and kind of show your expertise that way. So it's two different ways. I'm sure there's other ways that creators get reached out to, but those are the main ones
Yeah,
in
those are the
the
main ones.
industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would you say is important for creators to know when they're building their strategy, right? Because a smaller creator is going to have a different approach. A bigger creator is going to have their own approach. So, what are the differences that you noticed in your work?
Yeah, for influencers at a higher level, the more brand partnerships that you can have, the better. brands are looking at a mix of non-brand and branded content to decide if you can be an extension of their brand, right? So they don't want to work with someone who posts to their page every other post is an ad, right? Because you aren't representing them. You're just representing different brands at different points. And so what's so key in the influencer social media industry now is those long-term partnerships where you do become an extension of the brand and your audience associates you with that. And so they're not going to associate you with the brand if you're doing a different brand every other day or even every week or every month, you know. And so that's really important, especially as you're getting larger and you're getting more opportunities. Be picky with the brands that you are working with because you are going to become an extension of them and they need to make sense with your organic audience. Like, for example, if you are a fashion makeup influencer and all of a sudden you're doing like baby products or like homestead products, you know, that's not going to fit with your existing content and that is going to rule you out for brands. And so that's really important from a larger standpoint. From a smaller content creator nano standpoint, your key is going to be building that engagement because you don't have to, or you have to establish yourself with the credibility that people who have already put the work in to get to their massive following don't have to do. So that is going to be more important to have a content strategy that wins for your organic audience, figuring out what your niche is, figuring out how to grow your page, how to scale it, what works with these algorithms, right? And once you get over that hurdle and you get to that like mid-tier 100,000 followers on Instagram, for example, you are able to focus more on what do I want my organic audience to resonate with and what does resonate with them. So it looks different at different stages. And I think the goal for content creators always is going to be to scale to that macro level, right? Because you have more flexibility in what you can be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think about folks saying that, being a macro content creator, being a macro influencer is kind of dying out, right? They're saying that it's not as much of a priority for brands. Is that accurate in the work that you've seen?
I would say from a celebrity standpoint. So when you're looking at like 100 million, 1 million plus followers, right? That is when you get to the level where brands just can't afford you or don't think that it's worth it, right? To be spending all of this money for one video from you, unless their main business objective of working with you is awareness. If that's the case, the macro or celebrity level influencers are in. If they're looking for more content creation, long term partnerships, you're still okay at that macro level from 100,000 to 500,000, I would say, or 500,000 to 800,000. You're fine there because that's still something that's really important for brands, especially focused on awareness. And you have another level of credibility that if brands have the budget to work with you, they're going to want to capitalize on your organic audience. So it really depends on the brand and their level of budget if they can afford to work with you. For most brands, they are looking to help with the content, right? And so you don't have to have that large following, but I wouldn't say it's dying out. And if anything, in 2026, what everyone is predicting in the industry and platforms are predicting is that long-term partnerships are going to be more important than one-off content creation. So while the past 2 years have pivoted from these huge macro creators to content creators and UGC and nano and micro, you know, that we're starting to see that even if you are micro, brands are looking to work with you multiple times so that you become an extension. So I think that is really key, is that they're not dying out from a macro level, but the number of interactions and occurrences and videos and content that you're creating for the brands is increasing into 2026.
So I think this goes back to partnership. Being able to have those long-term commitments requires you to be a good partner. So what are some of the behaviors and characteristics that the brand is paying attention to determine if a creator is actually a good partner?
Yeah, I would say asking questions. It shows that you care about what the brand's purposes are for the creative campaign, that you care what the brand business strategies are, what the marketing strategy is. So, asking questions is huge, especially before contracting. And then also, once you're contracted, making sure that as you're in the content creation phases, you are meeting what they're asking of you and want to work with you on. I think. When it comes to different trends, bringing that forward, asking questions. Do you think, is this what you're looking for? You know, is I see this as an existing content example in your brief. Would you like this to be an exact replicate of that, or are you looking for me to do what I know works for my audience? So I think asking questions is key. I would also say being responsive is key. It's really hard for brands when creators apply, they get accepted, and then a couple of weeks have gone by and they haven't heard anything from the creator. And so it's really important that you're checking that. You're making sure that you're responding within, I would say, 24 hours if possible, because you need to treat this like a full-time job as well and be professional. And if you can't respond to your email or your influencer platform network, that is going to be a huge red flag to brands, because they need to be able to reach you, just so they know that you care and you're excited, and you need to be passionate about the work that you're doing. You can't just be doing this for the money, and brands can see through that when people are actually passionate to represent what they are selling. So I would say those are the three things: ask questions, be passionate, right, and then also be responsive, because that is so important.
Yeah, I love that. That's definitely the starter kit to building that retention when it comes to partnerships. And then can we talk a little bit about when you're working with creators? Have you had them reach out to you directly? Have they pitched you directly? And what has that been like in terms of the pitches that work and the pitches that don't?
Yes. Don't use AI. That is the biggest thing. I think it is really easy for brands to understand when you have taken the time to respond to them and when you have put it into ChatGPT, copy and pasted it, and responded to you. Because what that shows is if you're taking all of these steps to avoid doing it, like inputting it into AI, for example, you're not going to put the time into creating quality content for the brand. And that is an automatic association that brands are going to have. That's not to say that you shouldn't be using your resources to come up with a pitch idea, but it needs to very obviously be that it's from you. You understand, you are passionate, and it's not just a direct copy and paste. I would say that is the automatic thing that people roll out. The second thing is, I know I keep saying it, but understanding the target audience. Like, if you say, I know I can bring this product to life or this service to life because this resonates with my organic audience, which is XYZ, you know, and that aligns really well with your target audience, and my values as a creator and my mission as a creator aligns really well with your brand's values and missions as a brand. That is the best way you can position yourself, because brands need you to represent them, to be an extension of them, you know. And so if you can prove that in your initial pitch, you're in. Like, that is the key thing that they are looking for. So I would say those are the standout ways. It doesn't matter how you do it. It depends on the brand. Some are small enough where their social media manager is going to be the one selecting you as an influencer. So if you're reaching out via DM, they're going to see it and they're going to be the one making the decision. Sometimes you're going to reach out on DM and they're going to send you an email that you need to reach out to, right? Sometimes you're not going to get through to the brand, right? Because that is not the way to do it. And so that, I think, is the argument for these influencer management platforms, is if you are having a hard time with cold reach, direct outreach to people and to brands, it's the best way to do it, is to get onto one of those platforms.
Absolutely. And then a little bit about the people, right? So let's say they're not on the platform and they're doing that direct outreach. What are the titles, the job titles that they should be looking out for to be reaching out to actually get in contact with someone who's making these decisions?
Yeah, I would say social media manager is a key one. Paid social planner is a key one, especially if the purpose is to boost the content or use it in a paid campaign. Social media strategist is a key one to look out for. Influencer management, content strategist. Those are some key job titles to look out that you can reach out to. I mean, you could even reach out on LinkedIn, you know, and that's a way to get through to them. They're constantly, or I was constantly looking for influencers to build up a repertoire of ones to pull from when brands were looking for them. So that is another key thing, is if you go the agency route, they're constantly looking for new influencers to bring forward. So that could be another key way in to stand out, would be to find someone at an agency whose job is selecting influencers and reach out directly to them versus reaching out to the client themselves, because a lot of times these bigger companies are going to be working with an agency when they're selecting.
Yeah, that's a gem right there. And I've actually shared that advice. When you're looking to work with brands, reach out to an agency and ask to be put on the agency influencer list because, like you said, you're cultivating a database of creators to have on hand. So let's pivot a little bit, talking about the actual longevity of, you know, what it's like to be a content creator in this space, right? What have
Yeah.
you observed from the creators who build long-term careers versus the creators who are more so selected by brands for one campaign and then the brand never reaches out again?
Yeah. I would say that the ones who do one off videos, right? They are creating the content, it's short term, they're getting one, let's say $500, for example, for a video, right? And then they're moving on to another brand. That is fine for the short term. But when you're a content creator, you need to be thinking about long term strategy of what you want and want to get out of being a content creator, right? If your goal is to have a large following, work with brands consistently, get to go to influencer retreats and go to free product giveaways and or receive free product from brands to make videos about it. You need to be really focused on those long-term partnerships and relationships with brands, right? So even if you only get contracted for one video, following up the next month or the next quarter saying, I'm available to create more content for you. I think it's really important that we have a long term relationship because my organic audience is expecting to see your product on my page, because that is so important. If you can say, I have had my organic audience reach out to me, I have noticed that my content has not been performing as well without your product or service in it, that is so key, and brands will automatically work with you again in the future, especially if you can come up with a compelling creative idea that fits what their campaign goal is.
Yeah, those are great tips. Those are really great. For people who don't know the process for
Yes.
being selected by a brand to delivering the actual content, can you
Yes.
give them an overview of what it actually is like and what are the timelines realistically for the bigger brands?
Yeah, for bigger brands that are working with an agency, it depends. A lot of the food and beverage clients that I have worked with have had regulatory boards like the USDA or AMS, for example. So that pushes the timeline out. If you aren't working with a commodity board or one that has to report to a USDA or an AMS, it looks more like a month is what they're doing. So they're looking for, you apply, you get accepted, you have a week, 10 days maybe to create the content for your round one. Then the creator is going to submit that, right? Brand is going to look at it, or agency is going to look at it, say, is this good enough to move forward with? And if so, then you're only working with them for 10 days, right? If not, and they need a round two or any edits, that's going to go back to you. They're going to expect that within a week that you have round two done, right? After round two's done, and hopefully you don't have to move to round three, you move forward and they either ask you to post that organically to their page and send you a Spark code if they're going to boost it, or they're going to post it, or they're going to ask for the raw asset. It really depends on the strategy of the campaign. But I would say overall, it's going to look at like a month, which is why it's so key to be responsive, because they need that quick turnaround for different levels of edits. And so while there isn't a one timeline fits all brands and fits all creators and all partnerships and all of that, it is so important that you're turning around high quality content quickly and that you are making this a priority. And brands can tell when creators are not making it a priority, and that discourages them to work with you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a creator that is working with multiple brands at one time, this is part of
Yes.
the strategy, understanding do you have the bandwidth to handle multiple, obligations. And so you mentioned this, and I think it's important to unpack the spark code piece. A lot of creators don't quite understand how their content is used. And I know this episode is focused on the brand selection specifically, but I do want to just touch on that a little bit. What are some of the ways that the creator's content is actually repurposed or
Yeah.
boosted, and what is some of the terminology that creators can keep in mind when they're going into brand deals?
Absolutely. It is so important to understand the terminology as a creator when you're going into these brand deals, because you have to give permission for your content to them. And you may not understand what you're giving permission for, right? And so, some key terms to understand is boosting. So, what boosting means is that you're going to be posting to your organic page on whatever platform you were selected for, right? And then that is going to be used in their paid campaign. So they're going to be exposing this to a much larger audience than their organic or your organic following, right? That is a stance and a situation where you want to be able to do community management. You want to be ready for that level of views on your page. And if you aren't, that is not something to agree to. The second thing that they're going to be using your content for is either a raw asset upload. So what they're going to do is they're going to run your content as if it's from their page and you were just a member of their creative team creating content. So that is when they ask for raw asset. They're not asking you to post to their page. They're not going to most times post to their organic page. They're going to be using this in a paid ad that is going to run in the background to their target audience, right? Or they'll ask for a raw asset and they'll upload it to their page, but they will tag you, because brands, if they're thinking strategically, are going to want your name on this content because you create more credibility for the brand and more authenticity for the brand. So a lot of times they're going to want to use your name and likeness for this, right? Another way that they're going to do it is they're going to ask for solely organic. You're posting to your organic page, you're tagging them as a partner, and that shows up on their page as well organically. So, especially on Instagram when we're talking that way. So it looks different. It's going to be different terminology for each page, but just keep reading up on what Instagram's calling it, what TikTok's calling it, what YouTube's calling it, because they're going to be different terms, and you want to understand when you're signing a brief and you're entering a contractual agreement that you are okay with what that looks like.
Right. Yes. And they should be charging more.
They should be for paid. Yep.
Yeah. These are all
Absolutely.
helpful things to know. And I think as we get into the, I guess, the specificities, right, of what it is to run paid social, paid ads, what
Yeah.
metrics do you look for, as someone who is running these advertisements to see if a campaign is actually performing well?
Yes. So we're looking at traditional media metrics. So CPM, which is cost per impressions, it's 1,000 impressions. That's the mill in it. And then we're also looking at impressions, which is any interaction with the ad, right? We're looking at reach. How many people did the ad reach? We're looking at click through rate. How many people clicked through the rate or through the ad? How many traffic landing page views did we get? Cost per landing page views, if we're able to measure that internally. We're looking at ROI, ROAS, all of that. So it depends on where you're at in the funnel and what the marketing strategy is for that. So for awareness focused, we're more focused on CPM, reach, impressions. If we're looking at driving traffic to a page, we're looking at click-through rate, landing page views, cost per landing page views. If we're looking more at the bottom of the funnel, which is trying to convert to sales, we're going to be looking at ROI, ROAS, clicks, all of those metrics. So we have the traditional media metrics that we're looking at. When we're looking at creator creative performance, we're going to be looking at hook scores. How well did they hook the audience? And so we can measure that by what were the interactions that were taken within the first couple of seconds of the ads. And so as a creator, it's really important, both when you're working with brands and on your organic page yourself, that you are hooking people, because they're not going to watch to the end of your video. They're not going to keep interacting with your page if it's a static or a carousel, if you don't hook them right away. So that is a key metric that brands are going to be looking at. They're going to be looking at watch score when we're talking about video. So are we getting people to what point are people dropping off in the video, and why are they dropping off in the video? And so they will compare this across different creator content to decide who is resonating and being more authentic with the audience, not feeling like an ad that people jump ship from right away. We're looking at video view rate. That is essentially watch score. We're looking at video completion rate. We're looking at video views. And then we're also looking at engagement, because engagement is so key when we're talking about creator content. So engagement looks different on each platform. It's measured differently by different brands. And so you could use in the ads manager, the exact metric that says engagement. You can be adding up likes, saves, shares, all of that, and then dividing that by impressions. It really depends. But if your content is creating interactions and engagements with their audience, that's going to be considered a top performing ad. So the media metrics aside, the most important thing that they're looking at from a creator of what works and what doesn't work is, are people staying to the end of the video or interacting significantly with the static or the carousel? And very rarely we're going to see brands that want stories, because they disappear within 24 hours. So a lot of times this is going to be in feed. And that is the most important thing for them, is if this is on their page for long term or on your page for long term, are people going to continue to interact with it? And this is not a short blip in time that people are engaging with because it popped up on their story.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, this is added value for you all because the episode was only supposed to be about the selection. So you just got a whole bunch of bonus information. So I appreciate you sharing that insight. I think it's going to be super helpful for creators to understand what to position themselves as
Absolutely.
when they're reaching out to brands, right? Because if you're doing an awareness campaign, they're looking at entirely different metrics. So for those who don't know, can you just give a quick rundown of the marketing funnel and what that means for creators at different stages?
Absolutely. So the marketing funnel is threefold. So the top of the funnel is going to be awareness. And so the main purpose of brands doing this is to get people to understand their brand mission, their brand values, what the product is that they're selling, who they are. This is a lot of times for commodity boards, for example, who are not selling a direct product, or for new brands and new companies, right? The middle part of the funnel, which is the second fold, is going to be consideration. So what this is when you're getting people to interact a little bit more with the brand and say, okay, I'm ready to learn more. A lot of times in paid, this is run as a traffic campaign. So what that means is they're driving you somewhere. So people are clicking out of that, or they're staying in platform, which we like to advocate for in social media, because we know that users are not leaving the platform often. But if they do stay in platform, it's leading them to a TikTok shop, for example, or an Instagram shop, or there's third-party platforms where it pulls up like a store locator, for example. And so that is what the consideration side is. And brands that are doing this are going to be ones that are driving people to in store, are driving people to learn more, are driving people to recipe like links and pages within the food and beverage industry. And then the bottom is going to be more of our direct to consumer clients. And so they are selling a product. And the most important thing for them with paid and social media marketing is getting people to buy their product, right? So that's the bottom of the funnel. So it starts up high, and then it gets low, and then it goes to the bottom, and it looks like a V and kind of like a tornado. And the reason is that audience size looks like that. So when we're talking about awareness, we're reaching a much larger audience. This is how can we talk to as many people as possible about who we are, right? Consideration is going to be a little bit more narrow, less broad. And then the most narrow is going to be the people who we know are going to buy the product from an ad. So that is the three funnel. You can look it up too if you want to see the visual, but it is really important to understand why people use that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful breakdown, and I haven't heard someone describe the why. So I think that's important to know is why it looks like that is because it reflects your audience size, right? The audience size that you're trying to reach
Yep.
with the campaign. So at the top, just to summarize, you have a larger audience, right? That's awareness. In the middle, you have a little bit smaller audience, that's consideration, and then the bottom is conversion. You're trying to convert that like 110% of people
Yes,
who went from the top to the bottom of the funnel. So
exactly.
as a creator, you should understand if you're pitching to brands who are doing awareness campaigns, that is obviously going to mean they're reaching more people, and
Yes.
you're going to charge more for that because the more people you reach, the more money you have to invest in that. And so, as a creator, be mindful of that piece right there. As we wrap,
And bottom too.
yeah,
You should charge more for bottom. I think the least that you can charge is that middle where you're driving them out, but the bottom, when you're like directly converting to sales, that is a ROI that they can prove, and brands are willing to pay the most for that. Is going to be that bottom of the funnel.
Okay, okay. I think that's advice that I actually will say is very controversial. So
Yes.
to hear that, I think is insightful because some people say since it's ROI, ROIS, right, ROAS, they're going to have a specific budget and they're going to have more constraints with their budget. But you're actually saying that since they have a certain outcome that they know they want to achieve,
Yeah.
they're willing to spend more for that.
And they're able to directly connect it with what you're doing. So they're willing to spend more for that to say that this ad specifically drove this many sales. You can't do that with an awareness or a consideration or traffic campaign. You can just say, I know from this many, or from this ad, this many people clicked out, or this many people saw our message. But when you're at the bottom of the funnel and you're doing that direct to consumer sale, you're able to say, this creator generated this amount of dollars in sales. We need to work with them again. And so that is a really valuable relationship that you can have, especially as a smaller creator, because they're going to want to work with you more often.
Okay,
Yeah.
very insightful. We might need to do a part two, Olivia. I think there's so much that there's so much there. But yeah, no, I love it. This has been so insightful. I'm sure that the creators have taken pages of notes. But again, the episode notes will be available for purchase. We'll have everything summarized in a very concise way so that you can take as much information as possible from this episode. Olivia, any last thoughts that you want to share with creators who are getting into the space and trying to understand how brands are with sifting through the options that they have when it comes to who to work with?
Yeah, I would say the biggest takeaway from this is to truly understand your organic audience and to truly understand the brand that you're working with, target audience. If you can do that, it doesn't matter what your following is, that is going to be key to brand. So, really understand the data behind why your content works and why brands' content works. But if you can do that, you'll be successful regardless of where you're at in the journey.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Olivia. We're so grateful for you coming on to the episode today. Where can people connect with you if you're open to that? Or how do people stay in touch just in general with what you're doing?
Absolutely. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Olivia Parker is my name, and I'm in the Austin area. So feel free to connect, and I'm willing to talk with anyone. If you have any questions, feel free to message me on that.
Amazing. Thank you again. That concludes our episode for today. Again, make sure you check out the episode notes for more insights on this episode and how to really get the most from it. And then if you have any questions, reach out to Olivia, reach out to myself, of course, and then we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for watching.